learn to respond to whatever name I hear from me. Chairman Cohen, Ranking Member Franks, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, it is an honor to appear before you today to discuss the problems of and solution to the midnight regulation phenomenon. As a senior research fellow with the Mercatus Center, a non-partisan university-based research, education, and outreach organization affiliated with George Mason University, my colleague and I have worked on this issue extensively, and I am concerned about the effect this phenomenon has on good governance. In his inaugural address, President Obama committed to accountable and pragmatic government. Unfortunately, at the end of every presidency, agencies trample on these values as they issue a flood of last-minute regulation. If Congress does not reform things in the process today, the end of the Obama administration will likely be no different in this regard than those that have preceded it. After all, in spite of effort within the Bush administration to prevent an outburst of last-minute rules, too little has changed since the frantic last days of the Clinton presidency. The Mercatus Center's work over the years demonstrate that the midnight regulation phenomenon is systemic and crosses party line. At the end of every administration, Republican or Democrat, there is a dramatic spike in regulation. This spike is especially pronounced when the transition is to a president of the opposite party. The most common explanation in the literature for this phenomenon is the attempt by the administration to extend its influence into the future. Knowing its successor will not share its policy or priority, there is an incentive to write in stone as many of its policy as possible. There are two other reasons why midnight regulations are pernicious. First, after Election Day, a lame duck president faces little accountability. He will never again stand for election, nor will he have to deal with Congress in the future. This lack of accountability frees the president and his administration to enact regulations that previously had been politically impossible. Second, and more importantly, the midnight regulation phenomenon dilutes oversight by the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. OIRA regulatory review exists to ensure that agencies have carefully considered alternatives approaches to regulation, that they have correctly estimated the cost and benefit of these alternatives in order to find the most efficient course of action. By its nature, this type of reasoned economic oversight of proposed regulations requires time. Unfortunately, the torrent of regulation at the end of an administration weakens this oversight. My colleague Jerry Brito and I found that in the first 7 years of the Bush administration, OIRA reviewed an average of 7 economically significant regulations per month. Over the last 3 months, however, that number had doubled to 14. Moreover, while the number of regulations OIRA reviews at the end of the presidential terms, well, it spiked, its staff and budget remains constant. It means basically the time it has to review each regulation decreases. Another of my colleague, Patrick McLaughlin, is actually put out a study that shows that that review time is slashed in two. To address this issue, we suggest a flexible cap on the number of regulations that an agency can submit to OIRA at any one time. This cap would be tied to resources available to OIRA, which could be increased if necessary. The midnight period, however, also highlights persistent problems with OIRA oversight during the regular process. Since its creation, OIRA staff has been cut in two, and the budget in constant dollars has shrunk by about a third. This downward trend hampers the president's ability to effectively manage regulation, paperwork, and interagency coordination. But any increase in staffing and spending will be useless unless Congress addresses a more fundamental issue. The ability of OIRA to carry out its mission varies both across agency and across administrations. Depending on the degree of latitude granted to the OMB director and the OIRA administrator, consistent management of the quality of cost-benefit analysis has been broadly inconsistent. For example, different agencies are given a pass on the quality of their regulatory analysis or on any application of that analysis for decision-making by a particular administration. OMB is essentially told to back off in these cases. Congress and the executive branch must give OIRA both the resources and the ability to hold agencies accountable for producing effective and cost-efficient rules. Ensuring that these principles apply during the midnight period when accountability is reduced is even more important. Finally, Congress should dedicate itself to writing clearer, more detailed, and more definitive statutes that require sound analysis of regulation. In this way, Congress would better exercise the policymaking authority entrusted to it by the Constitution. Thank you.